Right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining the VX specials. We're super excited to be live again towards the end of the year. It's festive seasons. We're excited to just be on holiday for those of us who will be going on holiday. Um, well, if you're just joining the live, welcome. Um, Today we have a really interesting guest with us. Megan Dong. She's the creator of Centaurworld. We had the pleasure of hanging out with her a couple months ago when the season one first came out, and the season two has been out for about a week and it's absolutely phenomenal. If you haven't checked it out on Netflix, you got to do that right now. Um, so Centaurworld 2, it's twice the music, twice the excitement, twice the adventure, and we are super excited to join in. If you're just joining, this is VX Specials, and it's a show where we get to hang out with some of the most incredible creators on the planet. So here we go. Sketch Shark on VX Central, going live.
Hi.
Hi, how's it going?
How are you? Can you hear
I'm
me?
doing. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Excellent. Yes, I can.
Okay, great. How's it been going?
It's good. Yes, it's great. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, thanks for joining us again. We're super excited be to have the gift, which is Central World Season Two. It was definitely Christmas coming a lot sooner than we expected. But we're pleasantly surprised and very excited to have an awesome season two. It was almost like it was ready way before you guys even released it, like it was all set. Because yeah, because it's definitely thought through end to end. It's an amazing story. Um, well, yeah, tell us what you've been up to since then. Like, give us a whole lowdown of like in between before Settle World. I know you got chased by bears up the hill.
Um, well, to what you said earlier about it seeming like it was planned before, that's certainly the case.
Yeah.
The truth is we kind of actually rolled into like it was all we planned it all as the 18 episodes, and we weren't
Yeah.
sure exactly how it was going to be rolled out, but we wrote it with like a complete story in mind, and we
I see.
produced it that way as well. So when we had our team right after we finished episode 10, we rolled right into episode 11.
Uh,
So yeah, we had worked on this prior, and we were just kind of in post production and doing
yeah.
other things this past year during the pandemic.
Yeah.
But we've been working on this story a while ago. So
Yeah,
so
I can,
yeah,
it was evident. It wasn't one of those that, they have to think about the whole like, oh, how will we continue the story?
yeah.
It was thought through end to end. And it was an amazing experience actually watching the season two. Again, there might be spoilers in this interview, so if you haven't seen it, I'm so sorry. Because I am excited. And I'm not gonna be quiet. I'm gonna talk about everything I've made my notes.
Oh, great.
Um, yeah. So tell me, going into um, going into the, would you say in your view that this is a conclusive part of the series? Would you like in your head, how do you feel about, do you see Central World continuing, like having a season three and going on?
That is a complex question. When I went into making Centaurworld, I was aware that for a lot of streaming productions in particular, that a lot of times you only have like a limited number of episodes to tell a story.
Yeah.
And I went into this knowing that I wanted to tell something that felt complete. Um, and I wanted to leave it open-ended enough that if we were lucky enough to get a season three or to be able to continue the story, we could. But I definitely wanted to tell something that felt like it was a complete story and could stand on its own. So
Yeah.
I went into it trying to make something that felt like one complete story. But yeah, but I would love to make more. I have
Yeah,
there are totally
we would
there are
definitely
more
love
stories
for
to
you to
tell.
make more. Yeah.
Thank you.
Um, we'll definitely love that. It's really is um, an amazing show. The characters, the understanding of the characters has given us so much more depth on how far the story is going, and you know, basically just why the characters are the way they are. Because when you come through in the world of Centaurworld in season one, you have a lot of fun and you have a lot of excitement, but you don't have know a lot of whys. You ask a lot of questions, but season two answered all those questions perfectly. Um,
Thank you.
um, starting from starting from the top, kicking off with them in the hole and interrupting with the wedding.
Yes.
you know, like what was that? What was that an analogy of? Because it kind of like what were you trying to communicate with that being your first entrance into the new season?
It, um, I think we always knew that at the beginning we wanted, at the beginning of season two, we wanted Horse to, to go out just to go around overconfidently and trying to, sell this idea of going to war
Yeah,
to all the
yeah,
centaurs. And we wanted, and my co-EP Dominic, who wrote that song, uh,
yeah,
like I think he included that moment because we really wanted her to fall flat on her face and
yeah.
inadvertently just for it to get worse and worse and worse. So interrupting a wedding, having her, you know, imply that some of the characters might get eaten and all this other stuff or killed was,
Yeah.
and then also just to kind of trace back their steps to going to, I love the moment where she goes to the tree tar shamans where they tell
Hmm.
her like, hey, you kicked one of us and you stole our things, like,
Yeah.
um yeah, because Horse's journey in the first season, while it had an arc and she learned a lot, it was bumpy. Like she did things that, she did some things that wouldn't endear herself to all the characters that they met. So
Yeah.
we just wanted to show, to immediately have Horse kind of, go out there and not succeed in her mission. Because for season two, I think a
Yeah.
thing that we really wanted to address thematically was imposter syndrome, and also Horse having to learn sometimes that leadership doesn't mean that you have to go do all of the things either. Sometimes
Exactly.
you have to be able to trust those around you and to lean
Exactly.
on you know lean on
Exactly.
your friends or your peers and delegate
Yeah.
to.
And the beauty of that was that he gave us a method of exploring characters. Like Glendale was a motivational speaker. I mean, pardon my French.
Yes.
He blew my mind. you know, that was an incredible angle to it because I didn't even see how they were getting out of that situation. And wow, breathe in the bag.
Right.
Everybody's breathing. You know.
Yeah.
So tell me, in going what one thing I noticed about the season two was that a lot of the themes were actually going around were very character focused, and season one was very journey focused. It was very talking about like she's trying to get from here to here, and there was even the whole rainbow road analogy. So you're following that road, that journey. But in the part two, a big part of it for me was the backstory magic,
Mhm.
which helped us focus on characters. What was the inception of that? How did you come up with that? And I'm listening, but I need to get the charger for my laptop. So please
Okay.
keep going. I'll be
Yeah.
right back with you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even for season one, character was still a big part of it. It's just that in telling season one, the characters we focused on the most were Horse, Ryder, and Womawink, or Horse and Womawink's relationship in particular. And yeah, like we wanted to set up things in season two for us to expand on the characters. We seeded some things in, like Durpleton. We alluded to some of his trauma. We alluded to some other things that we were going to pay off later with the characters. But because we planned everything in advance, we actually tracked all of the characters and their arcs through season one into season two, and we always had these arcs planned for them. And we just knew that in season one, because Horse was the main character, the journey had to be focused on her personal story, and we wanted to really expand on the herd in season two. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I realized was being done through um, that was really the exploration of the characters and actually understanding why they are the way they are.
Mhm.
And to me, that was really powerful because it gave us like an opportunity to really get to know, Sanguine. Hello? Can you hear me?
Oh, sorry. Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, it's cool. I was like behind Doppleton and all his sanguine, he has like this dark underlying story of, you know,
Yes.
of horrible parents, and that could be anybody's story, you know.
Yeah, we we wanted to we've kind of joked in the writers room that we were writing the most disturbed, or like, the most Freudian fart joke and long running fart joke that perhaps
Yeah,
has ever been in children's entertainment. But yeah, we wanted to put something in there that seemed innocuous and, silly in season one that we could pay off later with a root in trauma, because trauma is one of the big running themes throughout both seasons. It's something that we wanted
yeah,
to kind of really explore, because
yeah,
I mean, trauma is something universal, and I think that kids go through trauma too, and people of all ages do, and it's something that I think should be addressed in children's media as well, and just
yeah,
it's such a
yeah.
universal thing that
Exa- ex-
discussing
ex-
it and the consequences of that is important.
yeah, it's essentially so they never feel like they're alone going through that struggle or that darkness that they're facing,
Yeah.
because although Cheddar's backstory was extremely hilarious. I know it's kind of dark to laugh at that, but to me, I can't feel sorry for him. No matter what happens to him, I can't just feel sorry. He's really a character that really came through for me. You know, because he's so tough because he was bullied all his life. And that was a really it was a really strong message for that character essentially, especially with the monochromatic black and white.
Melandrew, yes.
Melandrew, I couldn't stand Melandrew. He calls everything a ball. He's like
Oh,
ball.
he's terrible. Yeah.
Uh, yeah. What was this? Why was he? Why? What was the idea behind? Was it to give it a creepy horror 80s edge? Like, what was the whole black and white monochrome?
I mean, the whole world of the horse tars was something that we explored, where we were trying to figure out what is the Centaur world version of the 1%. Like, we have essentially a gated community, and we kind of went into this like very, almost French Rococo. Like, there's a bunch of different things happening there,
Yeah.
uh, with a lot of, you know references to different kinds of royal subcultures, and then for but we wanted them to all be sort of terrible, like Melangela, the leader, is, you know clearly pretty shitty too in her own way, but we wanted
She's
it was kind
horrible.
of, yeah, she's pretty terrible too, hilarious
Yeah.
but terrible. And we just wanted to keep making it seem a little bit more ridiculous, but also kind of sinister. And Melandrew was kind of the
Hmm.
culmination of that. And as we went further into the production and into post production, it almost started as a joke about, like, okay, what if he's monochromatic, but also, what if we put a film grain on him, and then the sound people added the popping noises too, just
Exactly.
where he's almost like, is he a ghost? What is he? But yeah, he's one of the mysteries there. Just,
Yeah, he's a really interesting character. I
yeah,
couldn't like and
it's really the deep dark secrets of the 1% is what that kind of represented for me.
yeah, yeah, it was a really the it was a the that the world of the Hostiles was really intriguing for me. But I
Oh, sorry, 1 second.
I had a WhatsApp call come through. I had to cut it
Oh, okay, I can hear you
quick.
now.
Yeah. One thing I really loved was the world of the Bears, and it was even the exploration of all these worlds, actually like being able to see Central World from a broader perspective. Because in the season one, we were on the rainbow, and we were just going through that journey, trying to. It was beautiful the way you get to the end, and from the end you then go around to come full circle to come to the end of the world again. And that was it was I think when it comes to um, um, getting immersed into the world, it was a really immersive experience. The Bear Tours, what was that inspired by? Fans? Because
And
there's
I
like,
mean, so a couple things. So I mean, we wrote this before I mean far before season one came out, and so it wasn't it those bird tars weren't inspired by our fans, or it's more like it is a little meta, but it's kind of for us as the people making the show. We're both. I mean, most of us are pretty nerdy, and we're involved in different fandoms, and we it's kind of a loving approach to fan culture, but we're
yeah,
also creators, content creators, so we've been on both sides of it. So it was
yeah,
fun kind of exaggerating fan culture, and then also exaggerating like the sensitivity of the people who are involved in the process. So the herd, a horse and the herd, um, they're a little bit hurt too by how things are interpreted,
yeah,
and within, like, it made sense for us that in Centaurworld, with Horse coming through and doing all that she's doing, her journey would be very different from the status quo that's
yeah,
happening in Centaurworld. So if the bird tars are watching everything, like consuming things like reality television, then
yeah.
Horse would be by far the most interesting thing happening in
Hmm.
Centaurworld. So that would instantly be like the most popular show in that world. And then it was
Yeah.
kind of fun to expand on, conventions and all of that. Um, but if you look back in season one,
Well,
we
the
actually
event show is
planted,
called the Herd Con.
yeah,
Herd Con.
we have heard comment in there.
I
But
died.
if you go back into season one and you look in some episodes, Baden, there's the guy with the Derpleton shirt, and he's actually in the background of a different scene. So they have been watching the whole
Yeah.
time.
Oh
But
wow.
it was interesting to consider how we as consumers, especially with the internet,
Yeah.
like how we can consume things, and like how that is for us, like with social media and all of that, how it's interesting in that it connects all of us, but it's also a flawed system. That's why we have these,
Mm-hmm.
like, kind of these, they had these weird eggs with these things
Mm-hmm,
called
mm-hmm.
message birds that
And
kind
those
of climb
are
down.
I
It's
can't
almost
stand.
like tweets, right? Sort of, but somewhere between tweeting and texting. But yeah, I
With
mean, like
actual
in
birds.
our
With actual
with
birds coming
actual
out of the eggs.
birds. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, we were kind of joking that like the ones that survive to adulthood become the bird tars. That's like actually part of their life cycle. They start as tweets, and then if they make it, then they
Yeah.
grow into the bird tard community. But it's yeah, it was just kind of an exploration of fandom, of the creator culture, of social media and all of that, um, told in like what we felt was a very Centaurworld way.
Yeah. It was pretty interesting, like the world of bird tour. Even looking into like um especially when they had the debate of why did she leave Ryder. That was so funny because to myself, I remember like after our conversation, like after our interview, I thought about it to myself, but like one question I did ask was, why did she actually leave Ryder to go back to the Centaurs, and then she's now making all this entire journey trying to get back to Ryder again. It's like, you know, and it made me just understand like how when you're on the screen, you really don't understand the emotional journey of people that you're watching, that you're idolizing. You don't really understand like the sacrifices that they have to make. You know,
Yeah.
so as much as they were watching all the time, they were still not getting, the intricacies of the whole situation.
Yes, exactly.
Mhm.
It's a very zoomed out perspective.
Exactly. It's pretty cool. Um, what is the creep tours? They never came back. What happened to them?
The which ones?
The creep tours. they met some guys in the forest when they got kicked out of the
Oh,
hole.
oh yes, the trash tars. Yeah.
Trash house,
They're
yeah.
they're
Yes.
there later. Yeah, they come back and they do join the war.
Oh,
But
okay.
it was, yeah, like um they that was funny because it was basically like Horst was able to recruit a group, but it wasn't the ones that she was expecting. And they're kind of like, like gutter punk vegans. So they're not, you don't know if they're actually going to be very helpful. They're probably not good at fighting,
Yeah.
um, but still, like it was fun to consider the different communities. That
Mhm.
yeah, that like what sometimes you set out to do one thing, but then someone else hears your message and responds to it, and you wouldn't expect that community to.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Um, I think I think a really going back to characters and actually looking at the backstory of those characters, that's actually a conversation I actually want to take a whole, you know,
Hmm.
um, jumping into each of them. Stabby
Yeah.
ended up being one of my favorite characters at the end of the season. I was just like, I just love this guy. And one thing I loved about him was he started as a crocodile coming from the other world, and then he became this really cute Stabby, which was Stapleton. But then you see that, and you see Derpleton's obsessive connection with him, and then you get to understand that with the flashback. What was that like? Um, was that the purpose on why Stabby was created?
Yeah, we knew that we wanted, that was like always from the beginning, like even in development, like that was always an idea that
Mhm.
I had, or I wanted a Minotaur to join the herd for season two, or for the second half. And it was a lot of fun playing with that. That was a character thing where we knew that Derpleton needed to heal his the unresolved issues he had with his childhood and his father, but also I mean, like the fun part, or the thing that inspired that, was also playing Dungeons and Dragons. I think a lot of people who play D&D have, you encounter things like goblins and orcs, and a lot of times, like sometimes I know I have anyway, like just adopted one of them into your, or you're like, okay, like what do you do? Like like I'm bringing this, I'm going to adopt this goblin or this orc or whatever, and then the DM has to deal with that. And so
Yeah,
that was also a partial inspiration for it, just sort of like having a character that is probably not originally supposed to be a part of the story, and just forcing them into the story.
hmm
um, and it was really fun to play with what that character's transformation would be. But I think ultimately, we even though the relationship is very strange, we wanted it to be something that was positive and healing for both of these characters, because Derpleton has his unresolved issues, and then Stabby is like from a world of war and violence too, and presumably didn't have a great childhood or a great life prior to this, and so they come to have this weird but wholesome bond.
yeah,
But it's healing for both of them.
yeah, and especially with that point in the hole when they actually get their point, their moment of realization, where Doppleton actually accepts that he's being overbearing, but then Stabby actually, receives him. That's a really lovely scene, and the music around that as well. I really like that. Um, exploring, um, exploring Wamawing. Um, One thing I did notice was I didn't get to really dig deep through the backstory magic on Wamawink. Could you shed some light on that?
Well, I think we showed her backstory in episode 4 in season 1, and
Hmm
we had a lot more a bonding between Horse and Wamawink
hmm
through like they had more of an arc in season 1, and for season 2 we wanted to expand on the side characters, the other members of the herd, and give them a chance to kind of
hmm
explain how they came to be and why their characters were the way that they are. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I think we shared in episode 4, Horse got to see her backstory initially, and to see that she was, a war orphan, and that she'd lost her family, and that was why she is the way she is, in terms of being overprotective, wanting to you know have a family and has kind of adopted this mothering role.
Yeah.
And then in the backstory episode in season two, we see a little bit of that, but we see her trying to, adopt her first, like a little ladybug tar. But yeah,
Or
I think because
bearing, or how there was a certain line that she used. It was misdirected overbearing love. There was a
yes,
certain,
yeah.
yeah, I really like that one. Yeah, yeah, it was Wamawake is a really interesting character, and I love the way that she was the least favorite character in Bird Talk. What was that about?
So she's
Yeah,
like our favorite. Yeah,
yeah,
like it was
same here.
something. It's and again, like the bird tar episode isn't like a commentary on the actual fans of the show, right?
Yeah, of course,
It's
of
more
course, of
just a,
course.
yeah. It's just sometimes the unpredictability of fandom, where like it's more
Yeah.
about like how sometimes your favorite character ends up being like the fans' least favorite characters or whatnot.
Hmm.
And certainly when we were first pitching that episode, a lot of people in the room were offended on behalf of Llama Wink, because she's my favorite too. I think that um, she's such a like a I mean the way Megan Hilty portrays her, but just like and everything about her is so
Yeah, yeah,
so
she's the bond that holds the team together for her.
yeah,
Yeah,
she
without
is.
Wamawake, they'll fall apart. Yeah,
Yeah, she's such a source of strength for
yeah,
everyone, and including Horace. Like she really helps set
exactly.
her straight whenever she's and is so supportive to her. So
Yeah,
Womwink is personally my favorite too,
yeah,
and it was just funny. The, because the bird tars have such a zoomed out view and they're not going to be able to see all of the stuff that we see like on the
exactly,
ground with the characters.
exactly.
They might, like we thought that they also might perceive Womawink as just being overbearing, because they
Hmm.
haven't seen the intricacies of those interactions between Horse and the
Ex-
rest of the herd and Womawink.
exactly. Wamawake is like a mother. She's
Hmm.
constantly not just providing, but also even keeping them guided. Because there are many a time that they would have gone, they would have each gone astray, but Wamawake keeps magneting them back together. Um, another character that we got to see was Zulius. Zulius never got his chance for backstory magic. What happened?
Zulius is I can only say that Zulius's backstory would be there would be far too much to get into. Like I would if I got to do a spin-off series, it would just be Zulius's backstory. Um,
Wow.
that would be my dream because he's such a fun character. Um, and yeah, like yeah, there would just be too much. Like we wanted to
Yeah.
leave some mystery to him too, just
Yeah.
in terms of
As a creator, I love that you actually did that because when I watched it to the end, I was like, it's interesting that Zulia's book is open because what actually strategically, you've actually created a fan need, something that they will chant for, clamor for, and that fan base would obsess about, which would then create, yeah,
yeah. And I will say, I can speak to part of the inspiration between for Zulius's complex relationship with Splendid, his
yeah,
rival turned. Um, I mean, there's a romantic undertone there, but
yeah,
that whole relationship was that or that arc was loosely based on the rivalry between Taylor Swift and Katy Perry, because I think there was some drama involving backup dancers that were stolen, but then later, like years later, I think that Katie sent an olive branch and then they're friends again. So
yeah,
like, and then that and like Mariah Carey and J Lo's dynamic, there was like a lot of like divas that we drew upon for like just real life, bigger than life stars that we just
yeah,
wanted to kind of have this complex, like rivalry, but also have some love there. And then also they're a couple. So yeah, but that's kind of where some of the whole thing with the glitter cats and Zulius and Splendid.
yeah,
That's some of the inspiration for that arc, actually.
yeah, definitely. Um, Especially, going into then, you know, the whole three. Why? What was the whole connection with Glendale being wanted in the whole? because
Oh.
Glenda, I was like, I didn't get it. I was like, yo, the show keeps getting. Tell me about that.
Well, I mean, as we see in Glendale's backstory, she's been stealing for a long time, but also, and we imply it in the first time they're down
Yeah,
in the Moltar jail that she's probably done other crimes that go beyond stealing. But yeah, she's certainly
yeah,
stolen a lot of things and has been doing it for a long time. Uh, the glimpse that we see, spoilers, inside of the portal tummy at the very end, like it's a lot that she's done. So
yeah.
given that the whole TARS whole thing is they're very bureaucratic and law abiding, yeah, she would definitely be wanted by them
Yeah,
for various
for various
things.
crimes.
Yes.
It was that was pretty interesting. I like I just like the consistency of it. Just the way these worlds are, it's like they're cast in stone. It was very educative. Actually, understanding that characters evolve, but worlds kind of are static components of the storytelling. Because they serve as like a root foundation. And it was quite a valuable lesson while studying Centaurworld. You know, absorbing that bit. Yeah. Tell
Yeah,
me
we
about
had
what.
we
Okay, please.
oh, sorry, I was going to say we had so many disparate tones and themes and things going on that we always knew that just the characters and those relationships and just who the
Hmm.
characters were had to ground everything, because otherwise, like, it was going to it's so all over the place that was like the one
Hmm.
thing that we had to keep as the foundation.
Yeah, yeah, and it definitely held it down because you you know what's it really held it down because you know what to expect in various parts when you're traveling with the characters. Okay, when they're in Hotar, this is they got to be on their toes because they make one mistake and they're in jail. Like, they go through
Right.
them. Exactly. Um, tell me about um, horse as the whole. We really established a character a lot more by making her feel disconnected at the point where she felt she wasn't needed. Is that a certain complex that horse has?
Because we were kind of exploring imposter syndrome a little bit, and for Horse, and we wanted to put her in a place of more vulnerability. In season one, if she's kind of learning to find who she is and trust her, find out who she is. In season two, she needs to learn to not only trust herself but to trust her family, because she's found her family, but now she also needs to trust um, that it's okay to not have to do everything or to be at the forefront, even if
Yeah.
she feels so much responsibility. Um, and so I think she's having some trouble. You know, it's the imposter syndrome thing where she's struggling, feeling like, am I capable of doing this? Like I said, at the end of at the end of season one, she was very determined. She was parting with Ryder on her own terms and saying, I'm gonna be the one to raise this army. And since she hasn't been the one recruiting all of these different communities, she's struggling with that. And so
Yeah.
that was where we wanted to show her, like, kind of having her confidence shaken
Yeah.
repeatedly in these first few episodes.
Yeah. And also even giving her that ability of maturity to understand that the bigger goal is the main vision. You are trying to put these people together. So even if it's not you, as long as it's happening, you should be happy, right? But her not seeing it that way kind of plays into that, like, part where she kind of just like grows, where she begins to see it clearly, like, like, it's not just my central world, it's your central world.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Horse is learning a lot about empathy too throughout these both of these seasons.
Hmm.
It's a big thing, is where
Hmm.
she has to become more introspective, but she also has to learn about what others have been through and why they, um, the how and why other people around her are doing what they're doing, and to also learn to trust that.
Yeah.
based on what she learns about them.
Yeah. Um, Tell me, um, the when we think about the Potos, the Potos. First of all, before you even get into that, the Potos, the selection of the worlds. What 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 was like? Was there a strategy to it? What did it come at creative random? How did you choose the locations?
We, I mean, it was, we determined some of the locations early on, and had we had more episodes, I'm sure we could have gone to all sorts of different places as well. But
Yes.
each location and the group that was there had to not only, it wasn't totally random. It had to kind of have some form of a meaning. So the guys up in the Arctic, the cold tars, um, yeah, we wanted to play off of their isolation, and also to have them people like have a group that is isolated and dealing with unhappiness and
Yeah.
insecurity, and so like we were trying to pick someone for um, pick a group that might have a lot of vulnerability, that would lead to, vulnerability and natural anxiety based on their surroundings. So that kind of a brutal extreme environment felt appropriate for that. And that ties into like why Glendale was the right character to speak to that group too.
Yeah. Exactly, because it was, yeah, it was. I was even going to ask that, like Glenda speaking to that group, what she was talking about, like the breathe in the back, the anxiety, was that the feeling that was causing them to even like side with the Nightmare King, right? So it
Yeah.
was, yeah, it was pretty cool. Um, Tell me about the entire that Glendale sequence. Why did you attach her to that personality of yeah.
We um I mean, having Glendale be the one to recruit that group was something that was designed from the beginning, and we thought of like what would be something that would display some level of growth or something that what you wouldn't expect. And having her do public speaking, having her do a TED talk, um,
Hmm.
felt like that just sort of felt like something that would be interesting, but also we felt she could do it if it was on the subject of anxiety, if she actually empathized with and understood these characters. As we said earlier, Glendale herself has done some ethically questionable things. She's
Yeah.
wanted, so to be confronted with a bunch of characters who are making, a morally questionable choice, but it's rooted in their own suffering and anxiety. It felt like that would be the time, like she would be able to recognize that and step up in that
Yeah.
situation. And
Yeah.
yeah, having having her do a public speaking thing, but made sense. But also for her to kind of go into a persona, we kind of, we're doing a parody of Elizabeth Holmes a little bit, not the message, but like the presentation. it
Yeah.
was it was
The
funny to think of like how would Glendale go 1,000% in one direction in order to sell this idea.
yeah.
And that was yeah, having this kind of Steve Jobs Elizabeth Holmes thing was the direction that we ended up going in. But
Hmm.
that's kind of
The
where that
whole
I think,
turtleneck, everything. I
yes,
know.
the deep
I
voice.
know. It was I think what I even enjoyed about it was even how it began. Um, clamp chains on her neck, on her feet. She's taken prisoner, but it's from there she gets to understand them. So it's a blurb. It happens pretty fast, but then one thing I enjoy about the team and your directing and storytelling is how you don't ever skip the process of how things happen. No matter how quick you show it in a sequence. There's a part where she was like, "Oh, there's a chain to your leg," and she's like, "No, it's a skippy rope. It's all about perspective." That part changed my mind. I was like, "Yo, this character, she is a motivational speaker." Because it's like, that's the only something a motivational speaker will say. It's like the glass is not half empty; it's half full. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I mean, like for so many people, the experiences that they've been through inform their perspectives. So I think one of the hopeful messages of the show is taking some, like all these characters have been through so much trauma, and yet it's kind of shaped them in a very unique way. So
Yeah,
even though there are these things that might seem like they're quirks or whatnot, like these are all things that can be used as strengths, or they have such strong perspectives that are maybe a little bit warped, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, especially when you put them all together.
yeah. Um, yeah, the going back to talk about Julius at the herd call at the herd call. Why was he the one that had that had that like? What about his personality motivated you to for him to be a crowd mover, the one that can
Well,
speak to the youths?
I mean, Zulius is a showman. He was a competitor in the Johnny Tea Times Be Best competition many times. He's from,
Yeah,
he clearly spent a lot of time in Qatar Valley, and
yeah,
was an expert at that. There was one version where we just had to cut this out for time, but originally Splendid was actually up there with the bird tars too. Like that's just naturally where he wound up.
oh
Like
wow,
he'd had a like a split up with the glitter cats where they left him too, and so they were supposed to run into him up there, but we just didn't have enough time, and it just wasn't, yeah, like it
it didn't
wasn't
fit
relevant
in.
enough to
Yeah,
that story, but
yeah,
but yeah, for Zulius, he's actually, I mean, like in episode 7 with the cat in Qatar Valley, we first see him helping Horace. He actually like helps behind the scenes and helps Horse get her get herself ready for the stage back then. And then in this episode, we see him just kind of go further with that. And then he ultimately helps later to in helping to arrange to manage the Hootenanny. So like having him be this kind of stage manager, but also to have like that vision with in terms of communicating with people, as like a natural communicator and someone who understands showmanship and communicating big messages.
yeah. I'm with you. Please carry on.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I think it just froze for a second. Yeah. So for Zulius, um, that was something where we thought that he could really step in and use those things as strengths, because he's so
Yeah,
good at keying in on like he's mischievous at the beginning of the series. He's kind of using that energy for like kind of stirring the pot a little bit, but he's got a
yeah,
gift for it. So having him kind of channel it in that way felt like good, like that was how we wanted to develop his character and bring his strengths
yeah.
into the
It was
mix.
it was pretty cool, and um, those were like to me out of everyone that they spoke to, the Bear Tours would have been the hardest to convince because left to them, they'll just want to watch the entire war. It's just streaming, you
Right,
know.
yeah.
So actually bringing them to
Yeah.
fight because they had the least at stake. You know, the Minotaurs couldn't fly, so the war was gonna be on the ground, and then they'll just be up there just streaming. You know, but
Yeah,
then
exactly.
and then even strategically, if that war was to actually take out the way Horst was talking about it, they actually needed them. So it was a pretty key move. Um, yeah, the the Hootenanny. I'm gonna talk about the Hootenanny, and that's where I'm gonna take a pause before I take questions from the audience, and then
Okay.
we move into the second half of the season. Um, um, First of all, tell me in your words, what is a hootenanny? Because out of all the explanations I got from all the songs, I just still get it. They all said, and that's what I actually love Stabby the most. When the hootenanny song was going on, I was like, I like this guy. Yeah, so tell me.
I mean, the Hootenanny it is whatever you want it to be, honestly. We talked about it being sort of like what is the equivalent of in Centaur, what is the equivalent of Centaur Christmas, or something that is like the holiday, like a big holiday that everyone
Yeah,
knows and gets on board with and has their own version of, or what is like everyone has their own specific traditions for it, but what is this one thing that unifies everybody, kind of
Yeah.
like the holiday seasons. It is the holidays now. But yeah, we wanted something that felt like it would universally speak to everybody, but everyone would have kind of their own disparate
Yeah.
interpretations of it and ways of celebrating. Um,
Yeah.
and then the
So
challenge is how do you get everyone to do it, like to get, to do it in harmony together.
mm,
But yeah, that's that. And that is kind of why, for the song, What's a Hootenanny, I kind of wrote it to sound like, it does sound like is it a holiday song? Is it not? What is this? And it just gets more and
yeah,
more convoluted.
exactly. It was that was a pretty entertaining part, and it made sense that Wama Wink was the one to come up with that idea. Like, who else would think about it with Maddie if it wasn't Wama Wink?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, mom knows, right? Like she's gonna know the thing that'll get everyone together. So yeah, that's why.
exactly, yeah, and that was pretty cool. And also, even at the point in time she suggested it, it was a very pivotal time, because that was the opportunity to actually tell everyone, like, yo, this war is happening. So once again, Wama Wink was like the glue that kind of sets the stage. It was pretty nice.
Mhm.
Um, I'm thinking about it. Was the idea of the Hootenanny, I have a problem pronouncing it, man, my Nigerian accent, was was the idea of the Hootenanny development choice? Was it always part of the development of the story, of the project, or was it something that was made at a seasonal time?
No, we that was something that kind of wanted to do early on, because it could have gone to one of two ways. With season two, it could have been something that felt celebratory like that, or it could have been like a training montage kind of a thing. And it felt more Centaurworld to have it be this sort of celebratory
Yeah,
musical gathering that just sort of felt
yeah.
more in theme with the show and the spirit of that world.
Okay, it's pretty cool. Um, yeah, so um, let's take a little break. And in this break, we're going to be taking questions from the audience. We've been getting a lot of questions being sent in.
Cool.
Um, um, I'm going to take one from Intellectually Fancy. I'm going to put it up on the screen. Can you see it?
Okay.
Um,
Yes, I
it
can.
says, do all centaurs have magic abilities like them, or just shamans? Did Wama Wing teach her?
I think that most centaurs have magic, or all centaurs are capable of magic. The shamans kind of have, more significant powers, and I think that's Horse developing that her ability to jump into backstory magic kind of
Yeah,
qualifies her. It's like a very unique gift, but they all have, silly magic. So
yeah.
yeah, they.
Hi guys, we're back. Sorry about that. We lost all your questions. You all have to send the questions again. It's all love anyway. We're back on live. It was a good half to. It was a good half. Um, we're back to taking questions. Please send your questions again. Sorry about the disconnection. Hi Meg.
Hi, yeah. I did see a question right before, yeah, before everything went away.
Yeah,
But yeah, I guess I can probably wait for a couple more people to reconnect.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I did see a really good question, which is about the names of the characters,
yeah.
I think.
I'm just gonna
But
put it in the comments. Kindly send in
okay,
questions, send in questions. Again, interview. Um, yeah. So you were about to answer the question that you saw last.
yeah, someone asked a great question about the names of the centaurs versus the humans, and how a lot of the humans just didn't have names versus the centaurs who had really over the top silly names. And that was
Yeah.
really, I think there's a lot of contrast between the two worlds. And in Centaurworld, they almost err to the point of having these names that are so ridiculous that, like, why would you be named this? And with the worlds that the humans are from, there is so much, they've been in this war situation for so long, and they're going, like, a lot of people have died and all that, that they've almost lost the whole point of, like, names are almost something that they forget about, or it's
Yeah.
everything is about utility and just about, they've lost, you know, like, horse and rider are orphans from the war. There's
Yeah.
no like a lot in the episode that we see with Ryder, and the episode that features Ryder, the one episode that has no music in it, we see that if you pay attention, like, a lot of the soldiers are really young, like, including Ryder, and those two kids they run into in the woods, like, a lot of them are kids. A lot of the soldiers are like teens or kids. So the world that they're from, there's so much death and dying, and that it's almost like, even if you know someone's name, they're gonna die. So it's almost like one step too, it's almost like too much closeness there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. That's actually a great. That's actually something that I actually missed out. So that's actually a really interesting element of the world building, that you actually looked at death as it's claimed a lot of the older generational lives, and you know, it's just now the kids are the ones picking up the pieces, you know. And then, you know, it's crazy because, you know, but we're gonna get to the end. I'm not gonna jump into that now.
Right. Okay.
Because the twist at the end is absolutely great, but you're gonna have to wait to the end of the interview to hear us talk about that. So let's keep taking questions. We have some more. Okay, people dropped in their questions. Okay. Oh, this one is. I'm going to hold on some questions back. This is a really interesting question. I don't know. Let me know if you want to answer it. If you don't want to answer it, we skip. Okay.
Oh, sorry, I can hear you.
Yeah. So the question is sexualities of the main herd.
Mm-hmm. Oh, like so we actually, that's a great question.
Yeah.
And we had, you know, like, we had discussions about this, but also we wanted, between, like, not just those of us who are on the crew, but some of our actors too. And we do want to leave room for, you know, like, I know a lot of people have their own like, thoughts on what the orientations are of the different characters, and we want to also leave that open to people putting, you know, like, we have some characters that are canonically gay, and Uncomfortable Doug I consider to be pansexual, but
Yeah.
for a lot of the other ones that are undefined, we want to leave
Yeah.
room for people to be able to interpret that how they want, because the show the show doesn't feature that much romantic love in it. The one heavily featured romantic relationship is between a male
Julius.
character and a female character. Well, there's that, but I mean, like, we're like, you know, like, at the ending. So like, the one that has kind of defined a lot of the world is between two, like, a male and a female character, and that is the most we get into romantic relationships, because so much of this is about found family, and that one isn't really a healthy relationship, but
No, it's
yeah,
not.
like, it's so we want to leave there, like, room for people to, you know, like, to interpret that how they will.
Yeah. Another question is from Agama Cole 06. He says, "Can we hear some more about the Ched and Julius dynamic?"
Yeah. Ched has some unrequited feelings. We've all been there, you know, but yeah. So Ched's in the friend zone, but
Yeah,
yeah,
and
like,
you see it when
he's
when
Um, I mean, Ched is a character that who has a lot of flaws, and but we also, like want him to be able to find, like he finds his own happiness in the end like in his own way. But
Yeah,
but yeah, like unrequited love is a thing that certainly happens to a lot of us.
yeah,
So that was something that like yeah, like we wanted to show more of the layers to Ched, and that was one area that we like where you see more of his vulnerability.
yeah. Um, then
I'm gonna scoot.
okay, I think this is an interesting question. Oh, okay. Then sure. Then I thought this was a pretty interesting. Will there be a Centaurworld art? This is from Alexis Art.
Sorry, will there be a, did you say art book?
Centaur.
It cut out for a
Yeah, and this
second.
says, yeah, will there be a Centaurworld art book from Alexis?
I would love a Centaurworld art book. Currently, no, there are no plans for that. I think,
Yeah,
yeah, I would personally love for that to happen. But I think there would have to be enough of like a demand for one.
yeah. Um, totally. And then we have more questions. This is a pretty interesting question. It's from Kappa Jaws. It says, what happened to Glenda's parents? It was implied she portal-tummied them.
Yeah, so there was, I used to, there was an extended scene that I had wanted to write into the finale, but it wouldn't, it just would, we just did not have enough time to put this in there. It would have never worked because of, there's other more important things to resolve. But, in this extended version, when
Yeah.
Jebree's in there kind of exploring, there would have been a scene where he goes down a hallway and her parents are in there watching television or something, but they don't,
Oh,
but
wow.
they've been there so long that they don't actually realize that where they are, or they don't understand exactly where they are, but they're waiting
Oh,
for their daughter and they don't realize that they're in there. But yes, so she
and
has,
a tummy. Oh, wow. So
yeah, Glendale has some
she has tummy
demons.
them.
Yes, yeah.
Wow. That is next level darkness. Um, then, oh, this is a really interesting question. I asked this question myself. He said, why don't
Plan.
the bird tours have four legs at
Ah,
the back?
we I mean, I explored that version too, originally, like just to see if they had wings in the bottom. But yeah, like because for Ched, we had him just sort of like flapping his arms, like like
Yeah,
as though it's like someone who's just never done leg day before, and
yeah,
and so since we had him kind of like that, we decided that the rest of the bird tars were also just going to be flapping like arm wings as
yeah.
well.
All
It was
right,
just a
yeah,
choice.
yeah. Okay. So that was more like a design decision.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
um, let's say,
Oh, did
I
the
thought
woman
Green.
really kill the Avatar?
Yeah, I saw that one.
Yes, I see
Yeah,
that
yeah.
one.
Uh,
Uh,
okay. Someone said, could you please elaborate on some of Gwendole's crimes?
I mean, she's stolen so many things,
Yeah,
and also so many living things. So essentially, she's kidnapped or tummy napped a lot of sentient beings. So yeah, I think that most of her crimes have
yeah.
some root in
She has,
stealing or kidnapping.
yeah, she has
Yeah,
strong crimes against humanity. That's for sure.
right.
Um, let's see. How does the Okay. I'm trying to skip questions about the end, towards the end of the story, and just put ones around what we discussed. Um, okay, we'll move on to, okay, what else was um, this is was a pretty it's from Kappa Joe's as well. It says, is Wama Wing's protectiveness towards horse meant to be a familial or romantic? Oh, that's it. Really not romantic. Yeah.
It's meant to be familial, or she is like, um, it's something it's but it's a deep one. It's supposed to be a relationship that starts where she is trying to mother horse, but then it goes into something else. It is so, I mean, there is something of a love story there. It's not meant
Mm,
to be romantic, but it's meant to be, like, it's really supposed to be an exploration of female friendship, which is complex, which can be as complex as a romantic attachment. But
mm,
in the spirit of the herd, and the show being about so much about found family, that relationship specifically is supposed to be, is not intended to be romantic, but it's deep.
yeah, yeah. I definitely can see that they do have even when especially when especially when Horse does her backstory magic on a certain character. She was the first to break down in tears with everybody, you know, which was pretty interesting. Um, so another question is, Ryder and the General look very familiar. Is there a familiar connection between them?
So, if you mean like, are they related? No,
Yeah,
they're not related. But however, he does sort of. I think we were conscious of having him almost look like he could be her dad, because she's projecting that on him anyway. He is her hero. She's lost her actual father, her biological father, a long time ago, and
yeah,
this is somebody that she's admired from afar, and getting to know him and forming a relationship with him over the course of season two. He does fill in like something of, like an aspirational father figure role to her, so that it hurts more later on when she finds out more things about him.
yeah. Um, definitely. Another question is, this is from Jeff Alcantara. He says, would you consider making a mobile RPG game using the universe of Centaurworld?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, like, that would be really cool, because there's a lot of inspiration from video games too, in the story. Like, I think um, there are a lot of things about it that definitely feel like an RPG, and a lot of our story team are fans of, like, a lot of our team plays games too. So yeah, like, I think it would make a really cool game, personally.
Yeah. And then this would be one of the last questions we take before we move on into the session. It says, if you were a centaur, what kind of animal would you want to be mixed with? This is a question from
Hmm.
Citizen Racid 14. That's an interesting one.
That that's a great question. I probably would actually want to be one of the merfolk, so maybe a shark, just because I love sea creatures. I love sharks. I would love to be able to just swim in the ocean. Uh, but
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, I did see a question like that. I think I'll take that one before. Um, this one that asked about um, um, uh-huh. So this question says, it's from JC Pinelli. He says, was Bruce the shark considered for Centaur World?
um, no, because he's not centaur like enough. I
Yeah,
think he's not quite a centaur. He's kind of his own guy.
yeah.
But
I
he's
think,
in the production card at the end. I incorporated him into the logo at the end, but not in the show itself.
yeah. Um, there's so many questions coming in. So many questions coming in. There's one that says, um, this one is pretty interesting. It says, Jobberton says he's 47. Is he really, or does age work differently in Centaur World? This is from King Gray.
Yeah. So I don't think he's lying. I think like age does seem to work differently in Centaurworld. The one thing I will say is that we didn't spell this out, but a lot of time has passed since the war started. So when we see flashbacks, the even though the woman and the general are still alive, it's things have been happening for a long time here. So um, it's yeah, it's not really exactly clear how long this has been going on. The war has been going on for, but uh, the woman and the general and the Nowhere King, because of what has happened and the trauma that they're all kind of a part of, they're kind of
Yeah.
suspended and sort of stuck in time. So they're
Mm.
kind of their own, they haven't changed much, and they're kind of stuck in time because of the inciting incident. But some time has passed, and the characters
Yeah.
are really the ages they say they are.
Yeah. So he asks, if Templeton is 47 years old, how old is Wallow?
I mean, that's the funny thing. We've talked about this before, like on the crew. Like everyone is deep into middle age at least, and then Zulius is God knows how old. But yeah,
It's like Zoolander. Zulius is Zoolander. You're super like whenever I see Zulius, I see Adam Sandler in that Zoolander. I don't know if you've seen Zoolander.
yeah, yeah. It's hard to say how old. Um, yeah, we may never know exactly how old Zulius is, and I don't think he'll ever tell you.
Yeah. This is a pretty interesting character, especially
Yeah.
the moment that we didn't get to see his backstory with the backstory magic, I fell in love with him a little bit more. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, this character interests me a whole lot more. Um, I think we're going to jump right in. Please keep sending in your questions. We're gonna get back into a question session. Um, so now, getting in deeper, I want to talk about the human world a little bit,
Hmm.
and then take the conversation from the human world into the Nowhere King.
Hmm.
And the finale was large. It was like a movie. Um, it was an hour plus, and um, it really, really, really brought a lot of light to every single aspect of the story. You know, and it was really, really powerful. Um, um, so I think um, essentially, tell me more about um, the dynamic between the connection between the the princess, and the Nowhere King when he was just Centaur. Was that always the dynamic between humans and centaurs? Finally, seeing the way humans looked at centaurs, was that always the plan?
Yeah. Back when I was in development and still working on the Bible, I wrote a separate document that was just the backstory of the lore, or just sort of like the origin of the conflict about the Nowhere King's origins, or just sort of like, I guess, like the dark fairy tale. That was what the relationship between the woman and the Elktar, and kind of how that all came to be. And yes, that was always intended. There were some other things in there that were excised from it just for time, but sort of like looking into the dynamic between humans and centaurs, like what would these two groups have been like with each other when the worlds were connected, and all that was definitely a part of it.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Um, so the what what was like the in terms of like actually like the breakdown of the storytelling from that last episode, how did the writers team actually structure out that episode? What was that experience like? What was that journey?
That was, we had to break that and re-break that in terms of putting because we have the beats chronologically. We
Hmm.
have those already, but then in terms of how do we disseminate this information,
Exactly.
like what order do we see the events? Like that was
Exactly.
something where we had to put that on a whiteboard and over again, just like with our story
Yeah.
editor Megan McCarthy and our writers room. We kind of had to like go over it many times to kind of figure out what order do we put these elements of the backstory in, and then what do we end up taking out? Like
Yeah.
one thing that was removed was in like my original document, there was a whole other thing where you have the element of like animals, right? Like regular animals, because the Nowhere King doesn't. There used to be a bit where the Nowhere King, after coming to terms with the fact that the elk part, like where he had to kind of contend with being in the world now, and he was trying to communicate with other animals, and he was still different from them too. And then
Mm-hmm.
eventually, and then also sort of seeing the relationship between like beasts of burden, like horses and all that, and humans. Like there's all these other layers, but we didn't really get to explore that for time. But that used to be a
Yeah.
whole thing, like where he used to have his own journey before kind of deciding to, be growing increasingly more isolated before being captured and driven into madness, basically.
Yeah. So that dynamic was actually really, really, it was really powerful because it's like, if we can have the power to change ourselves and take the things that we don't love about ourselves and remove them from our being, um, what happens if that part that we have separated from us can exist on its own and live its
Mm-hmm.
own life? It only becomes darkness. That means for darkness to be controlled, it must coexist with the light. You know, um, you know, it was pretty nice. It was a pretty interesting. Um, Tell me a little bit more about um, the magic of the key. I want to understand the key a little bit more. What are the limitations of the key? What is the boundaries around the key? And what else can the key do in this world?
The key was something that we wanted to have be built by the person who, or the one who designed it, was actually the Elktar, or who became the Nowhere King. So there's a scene in the flashback where he's there kind of flirting with the woman in a garden
Yeah.
party that's supposed to be celebrating him, but he was kind of like the chief, I guess, for a lack of a better way of putting it, he was like the chief engineer for the rift. Like he was the one who would fix it, who he knew how the magic worked, but he incorporated, it's basically like the different parts are tech from the human world, and then the heart of the key is made from parts from Centaurworld. So it's about that balance, and that's how it
Mm-hmm.
all works. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a thing where it's like that combination of things is very powerful. But of course, if you wield it, like when we're talking about balance, if you wield it for the wrong purposes, it's powerful, and it can be used in a way that corrupts things, or that can be, if you're using something extremely powerful like nuclear technology or whatnot, what is the flip side if you decide to just use it for your own advantage? So yeah, but
Yeah.
it's incorporating elements from both of the worlds.
Yeah, it was it's pretty interesting because as much as a lot of things are happening between this, the key is also the key, literally, in the
Yes.
story. you know, so it's an analogy for just like unlocking all the questions you have. It really is the answer, and that was really special. I see that the princess, I keep forgetting her name, the purple hair. Um,
The character, in all fairness, her name is just the woman. We never actually find out her name. Same
I
as
was
with many
feeling
of the
bad. I
characters from
actually was
Centaur
feeling
World.
bad, Megan. I was
Don't
actually
feel bad.
feeling bad. Like, I can't remember her name. And then I remember that, hey, there's rider, there's horse, there's woman. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, and there's general. You know. Um, so the woman, um, she had a special connection with this key and with magic. Can you explain that to me?
So the woman, being kind of like a princess, or
Wait,
someone
hang
of
on.
royal.
Please keep
Oh,
going.
okay. Being someone kind of royal lineage, she was somebody who
No comment.
had a curiosity and fascination, curiosity, just a natural curiosity and fascination with Centaurworld, and she will, you know, so she would go over there and kind of learn magic, presumably from the shamans or whatnot. But she was kind of in a place of privilege where she was able to do that, and she has a good heart, you know, and she is so curious about Centaurworld in general, and so we wanted her to kind of learn a bit of magic, and that's kind of like why her hair is purple and all that too. Like there's something she spent time over there, and she genuinely does have an appreciation for
Yeah.
Centaurworld, but then she's also very privileged. You know, she's royalty, and so she doesn't really initially. She also doesn't have to. She's not maybe fully aware of that they're not quite treated equally by the humans and all of that. So yeah, that's kind of where that comes from.
Yeah. That's a it's a pretty it's pretty interesting to actually see that humans. Oh, okay. We need to move.
Sorry, just the sun keeps like sliding over here. I was gonna.
No, it's okay. It's pretty interesting to see the way the humans actually like feed in on the magic of Centaurworld, and then just that union, because even I realized she even had a friend that looked like Glenn, when they were walking in when she first met.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a Glendale ancestor of some sort.
Yeah, exactly. I saw that. Yeah. So it was pretty cool to actually see that magic. It flows both ways. Looking at the machine that was mixing up creatures, what was that an analogy for something within the world of Centaurworld? And I just kind of wanted to hack that part.
So the machine, I mean, that's a device the Nowhere King uses. So it's kind of like, again, like the key unlocks everything, including that. Like it has the power to do, to separate, to bring together. It has the power to unlock so many things. And so again, it's wielding something. It's wielding. He's wielding it to do something that's for his own interests, and he's making, like, I think what we had him say later is that he decided to make his own family, that the Nowhere King, or the elk, in his desperation, feeling completely isolated and having lost everything, he fights back by taking, originally he was supposed to kind of have recruited like a cult of outcasts, or of humans and animals and different creatures that had were also rejected by society, and then turn them into the Minotaurs. But again, like there's no time, there was not enough time.
Yeah.
But essentially it's him doing some forcing his will and creating something unnatural to serve his own interests.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I love the idea of how you make us have sympathy for the Nowhere King, actually understand where he's coming from, and then to see that who we look as the hero of the story is still part of the villain of the story. That duality is really very strong. Can you give me like a understanding into why you took that direction towards the Nowhere King and his character?
I mean, duality is a huge theme. Like you just. Can you hear me? Okay.
I can hear you.
Yeah, we have.
Sure.
Okay, great. Yeah, we have like two different worlds. We have like a centaur itself is something that incorporates two different parts. But for the Nowhere King specifically, I wanted someone who was not just a foil to horse and rider. I wanted a villain whose whose story was about self-rejection, and
Hmm.
who, you know, like his story mirrors horse and riders in a way where it's about love, but then like it starts from a place of like the love between two creatures, and but it takes it's almost like it's like a completely different path. And I wanted I wanted a character who you could who horse could relate to, and yet like I wanted to show how I wanted to explore how the just how complex those motivations could be, but then how unforgivable they could also go to as well. Like I was sort of obsessed with like the movie like The Prestige and the game Soma, and that whole idea of the coin, like this coin flip idea about like you
Yeah.
mentioned it earlier, like if you were able to make yourself into the idealized, like into what you wanted, but then
Hmm.
like there was a part of you that got like that that lost the coin flip, what would that do? But yeah, like I wanted a character whose journey you could understand and relate to, but who did unforgivable things too. So
Yeah.
I wanted you to have mixed emotions about it. Like I have mixed feelings when I think of the Noah King. Um, I have sympathy for him, but then also, he genocide happened because of him, and so much death and
Yeah.
destruction, and you can't forgive it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Um, yeah. I mean, he is definitely a pretty dynamic character and has a lot of layers, and and even down to um, even down to I essentially even love the way the characters change and just that consistency of the change. That when you move into the center world, you eventually start changing because even Ryder, her hair, we
Hmm.
begin to see we can see her hair blob out in purple. Um, that was pretty interesting. To actually see the way humans would change in that world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, and definitely something that um, if and when there is a season three, um, we would definitely love to see more humans, matching up in Center World and, looking in the Center World design scheme. Um, why was Horse her real self when she was in the backstory of the Nightmare King, the Knowing?
Right. I mean, she jumped in there. It was like almost a symbolic death. Like the first thing that she does when she gets in there is she mourns the loss of her friends, and
Yeah,
she sings a eulogy for herself. But yeah, I think I think it was we wanted to see her kind of go back to her roots for this. Like she made the sacrifice, and almost like it's like she shed her joyful Centaurworld self to be in here. Um, and yeah, it I think visually it felt right for her to be confronting the Nowhere King's past, or that elk, just because they are similar. It's like her villain is actually an animal, just like she is, and
yeah,
I think it was nice to have them both stripped bare in this black void,
yeah,
and for her to look the way that she did when we first met her at the beginning of the series.
yeah. And you just kind of gave the feeling of, okay, look, in this place you're bare, no magic, you know,
Hmm.
just you. Yeah, it was pretty cool. Um, I think essentially a part that really a question I definitely have is do you see a lot of sub stories coming out of the Central World franchise in terms of like just the world that you're creating? Um, do you see yourself, if you had like a step to take, first of all, I don't even know what's going on right now, so hey, but if you had a step to take, would you go for another season? Because I don't want to say season three because hey, season three might be done already. Would you go for another season, or would you go for a backstory exploring one of the
like a
characters?
spirit spinoff. Um, I would be personally, I would be excited about either iteration if given the opportunity to do that, because I think, yeah, like I think there's exciting, like I would love to kind of delve into the characters' pasts, specifically like Zulius or showing more about the original conflict or whatnot. Like I think there's a lot of exciting stuff to be explored there. But yeah, like for like continuing the story, I do think that um, the active rebuilding two worlds that have been fractured by war, and also like blending these two societies or these two worlds together. I think there's a lot of potential there too. So I mean, like that would be very exciting for me personally, just to explore that and expand
Yeah,
that with Horse's new role.
yeah, um, yeah, definitely. It's pretty. The ending of the show. What would you say? Um, what would you say was your, what would you say was the, um, what would you say was were there like alternative endings in the camp? In terms of, would you say that you had another ending for how things were going to go at the very end, or was it something that everyone on the table already had sat down and were like, okay, this is the best way to wrap this up?
I think this was more or less the original ending. Like, yeah, it was. Yeah, this was how it was supposed to end.
Yeah.
Like, it, to me, a lot of it was
I'm
about
doing an interview.
um,
Talk to her so that she
a
cannot
lot of it was
move.
about breaking cycles,
You can
I
talk
guess.
to her.
So, like for the war part, I guess, like Horse and Rider, like Rider was always supposed to live. The Nowhere King was always supposed to end, like his cycle was supposed to end. It was always about breaking cycles. So yeah, who lived, who died was always that was always supposed to be how it played out, and the ending was supposed to be kind of a hopeful thing, where we were able to move forward with everybody uh, in these new roles.
Yeah, hello. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
These, yeah. So you were saying, towards um, um, you were talking about we're talking about the ending, and then
Hmm.
also various options on how that could have ended, and you were saying that that was the natural ending of the story. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Who lives and who dies was always supposed to be how it was.
yeah,
And we brought, again, like these, yeah, we're getting super heavy into spoilers, but we brought Ryder close to death too, because we were discussing, like it is there are these parallel journeys, and at the beginning, Ryder almost loses Horse. At the end, Horse almost loses Ryder, but because we're breaking cycles, um, like the Nowhere King, between the Nowhere King and the woman, in order for there to be rebirth and all that, the Nowhere King's story has to end. So to me, he had to die, and then Ryder had to live for there to be this rebirth. So we're breaking cycles of the cycle of war, and yeah, flipping, like the one
yeah,
who's generating the war had to die, and then the soldier had to live. So that was kind of always supposed to be how it played out at the
yeah.
end.
That was pretty. It was a pretty solid. And then of course, like following the Centaurworld way, it of course had like that balance of you know the of the the night the Nowhere King disappearing at the end, still was a blow to everyone, because at the end of the day, you're still connected to this character. Hello. Oh, we lost Meg. Let's see if we're gonna get her back. Okay, we're gonna get her back, and we're going to try.
Sorry, my
Ah,
phone did a thing. Yeah,
okay.
sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Um, yeah, these, lives are meant to be uninterrupted, but it's
Right.
impossible because life is happening during the live, you know.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, um, so yeah, um, favorite characters, new characters that were introduced. Um, who would you say was your favorite new season two Centaurworld character?
My I mean Stabby. Stabby, of course, like I love Stabby. And
Stapleton.
Yeah, Stabby I think was a like yeah, he was a lot of fun. And then I mean I do love some of the other new characters we met, like Melangela was really was portrayed by Maria Bamford, and she was so much fun to work with and so hilarious. And then Mouthpiece and Crandy were from the Bird Tar episode, and that they were played by Scott Hoying and Colleen Ballinger, and also like immensely talented. And yeah, so there was a lot of new characters that I really enjoyed. But
Yeah,
Stabby, I think Stabby was like there was just so much to love with that
yeah,
little guy, and the way that the crew would draw
definitely,
him was
definitely
a
Becky
lot of fun.
Apples.
Becky,
She was,
yes,
she was a badass. The point where she was like in the dark coming out of the castle, when they saw her from the top, and like, oh, where's Becky Apples? And then they saw Minotaur falling down the
yeah.
castle and her going
We
into the shadows. I was like, what?
we knew that Becky was going to be very different from Horace, but I don't remember if it was in the writers' room when we were trying to figure out exactly like what she was going to be like, and I think it might have
Yeah,
been Dominic who said it, but basically the pitch ended up being like the outward appearance of a beautiful horse, and the personality of Jason, or just like the personality of like a serial killer, or the T-1000, like was just a murder machine, and that was
yeah,
something that we thought would be fun to explore,
yeah,
because we didn't, because even though Horace has a lot of insecurities about what was happening with Ryder, knowing that Ryder had a new horse, we knew the reality was going to be that Ryder wasn't going to become super attached to this horse. She wasn't emotionally. She was never going to replace horse, but
yeah,
that was like the one that made us, that idea made us laugh a lot. Just the idea, like, what if she's just a cold-blooded killer? So
yeah.
that's what we ended up exploring.
Yeah, it was crazy. Um, it was super hilarious to me. Especially when they came back and then it was marking the horse and it was like, let's just call it six. And I was like, whoa, six. Um, yeah, I think we're gonna just like slide back into questions because we have so many questions uh, during this session. So I really want to just jump into a couple of questions before I talk into themes and also just other stories um, from the mind of Megan Dong. If you're just joining us, this interview is with Megan Dong. She is the creator of Centaurworld, currently streaming on Netflix. Um, and we're going to take this question from Guile 14V. He says, what did the Nowhere King eat in the rift?
um he didn't get to eat anything. He was just kind of, that's why he when they first meet him, he's kind of, he looks a little bit, he looks a little, he's really kind of goopy, and he has to kind of gather his strength a little bit. While he's in there, the Minotaurs are continuing to do their thing outside of the rift, and so that's why there's still the war happening, and he is like a bit of a link to them. But when he's in there, he's just sort of there. So when he comes out, that's why he's like eating guys to kind of reconstitute. But basically, yeah, he's not all that he's not he's not 100% when he's in there.
Yeah. Um, then there's let me see more questions we have. Um, this is a kind of a long one. It says, did the woman know the general was connected to the Eltor, or did he 100% lie about who he was? I was also wondering whether there was a Jekyll and Hyde type personality split when he split himself, or did both halves get the same personality? Thanks.
That's a great question. So no, the woman
Yeah,
was deceived. Like she wasn't. She was not. Um, she had to kind of discover this on her own
yeah,
later. It's it was a secret that he kept from her, and the implication is that she discovered the elk in in the dungeons. Kind of, we were talking about like the story of Bluebeard or some other other tales where like a wife has to discover something horrifying in in like a room in the basement.
hmm,
But yeah, she was deceived. And then in terms of the personality, he's just him. It's the whole coin flip idea of like you're like you're split or in the prestige or whatnot. And we kind of hint at this from the very beginning because the shooting tiny versions creates new life too, and those things like have a lot of existential dread when they're born because
yeah,
in my mind they retain the same personality and all the memories, and the same is for the elk and the general. When he's split, they both have the same personality and memories. It's just that one of them is in a position of privilege over the other one.
mm, okay. That's then God has another one. He says, how does the woman that married the general still look realistic? She be affected by Centaurworld?
Um, so I think like to me, she has been affected a bit by Centaurworld, but it was very early on, and it's just that her hair is not the color of the other humans. She has like that's the purple hair has to do with the time that she spent in Centaurworld, but it's less about the time that you spent there, and it's more about like what it does to your, how much you embrace it. So
Mm,
when we meet the Elktar, he's kind of more in the human world style because he wants to be human so badly, and so he's been affected that way. And like the woman, the general, and like they don't age. They're kind of trapped in the state that they are in because of what has happened. I love the
yeah,
idea of grief and of grief and guilt kind of keeping people preserved in a certain state, but that's why
yeah,
they haven't aged, and that's why when she's so broken when she's trapped in Centaurworld that she kind of remains the way that she is.
yeah. We have a question leaning a little bit into the production side of things. It's from Ontanamo.
Mm-hmm.
He says, how many writers were in the writers' room? How did you choose your writers?
Yeah, so there were, let's see, I want to say like maybe five writers, and then we had our story editor, Megan McCarthy, um, and then myself and Dominic, who's our co-EP, and then our script coordinator, Ryan, in the writer's room. So there was like, I would say there's maybe in total, including us who, like weren't technically like
Yeah,
staff writers, there was like, like
eight of
nine-ish
y'all.
people, eight or nine,
Yeah,
yeah, like
yeah,
that were consistently in there. But yeah, like it was very important for us to have an in-house writer's room. I know a lot of productions go freelance, but it was important for us to have like an active writer's room um, that was there all the time because uh, the way that we wrote the show too was very collaborative. Megan McCarthy was our story editor, and she brought kind of her way of working to the show, which worked well for us. Which was, after writing the first draft, like we all table read, like after one writer wrote the first draft of a script, we would table read it together and kind of do a punch up pass as a group. So like the whole room would kind of write the second draft before that writer would take it back and kind of finesse it. So it was very collaborative, and that kind of kept things more tonally consistent for us. And, you know, like it gave the opportunity for all the writers to contribute jokes and ideas to each other's scripts and all of that. And also that meant that they were there to answer questions and help give ideas to the storyboard artists, etc. So like it was a very collaborative environment.
Yeah. Okay, so basically, like so it was a lot of real-time discussions when it came to even like, you know, how to carry on with the story, you know, because most people are like directly more on ground. That's pretty cool. Would you say that how did the character design and the writing happen? Were they things that were happening pari pursuit, or were the characters designed even before the scripts were beginning to roll out?
I mean, with design, there was always like there's always a pass that happens after the storyboard, you know, because there's designs that happen before based on the script, and then there's designs that happened afterwards. But overall, the overall look was kind of established before. We had a little bit of time during development, slightly before production started, for me to work with Kim Knoll, who's our art director, and Evan Palmer, who is our lead character designer, and kind of establish what the two worlds would look like. And yeah, like I'd done like a lot of drawings of the main cast, and like I would do drawings in the writer's room too, just rough ones. And Evan would, I think he had a bunch of my sketchbooks, and then he would just sort of sometimes grab some of those drawings from the writer's room to kind of make sure that the designs felt like they were, you know, consistent with the world. And Evan's just very versatile, so he was able to do like a lot of the monster stuff, and then also the more bubbly Centaurworld characters. But yeah, there was a lot of back and forth and a lot of communication just to kind of make sure that it all felt consistent.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I think the designs that really like cut through for me were when we get to see the virtual world and also the photo world. You know, I felt those were super dynamic, especially with like even the way the animals were reflected in those centaurs. Let me lean into a bit of the questions that have been rolling in. This is a funny question. It says, this is from Gabriel. It says, what's up with the old black and white bird toy kid?
Oh, the horse, Melandrew, a lot. He's like, if I were to say who is true evil incarnate in the show, there's the I would say it's a toss up. It's a toss up between those characters in terms of who is just pure evil. but yeah, I think we like earlier in this interview, I think I sort of said that he kind of represents like the deep, dark secrets of the 1%, because the horse tars really kind of are like a caricature of the 1% of society.
Yeah. So. And this question is from Syndicates. It says, so the general and the elf's life force are tied to each other. Mm-hmm. Does that mean the general in the human world was immortal?
It doesn't mean that they're immortal. It doesn't mean that he's immortal. It actually means that like his life force was tied to the Noah King. He was actually always going to be the easier one to kill, because the Noah King had morphed himself so much with and made himself so powerful. But yeah, like I think between the two of them, the general was always going to be the easiest one to kill, but it meant that the general would have to wage this war that would just never end. And so the general was never interested in killing the Nowhere King because of that. So he was always, it always served his interests to keep him trapped. So I think it was the ideal situation for him to be trapped
Yeah.
inside of the rift.
Yeah. What then? I have a question from Lemorbid Artist.
I think I have
She
to
said,
go pretty soon too, by the way,
y-
because
y-
I am like, yeah,
yeah, for sure. That's why I'm wrapping up. These questions are like,
cool.
yeah, towards the end. Um, so I was like, would you ever do a short story comics to fill the void of the unknown?
I mean, I love doing comics. I love making them. For Centaurworld specifically, I wouldn't be opposed to it, but at the same time, it's such a specific. It's something that like where music is a big part of it, and it's specifically for the medium of animation. So I would prefer keeping it in that format, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Definitely the music is something that's very endearing in Central World, especially like we've been watching you on your favorite show online. I really like that one.
Thanks.
The music is really powerful, and you were involved a lot in activating the music. What's that experience like working with all these musicians and creating sound for Central World? And what was your favorite score of this whole season?
Oh, yeah, so all of the songs were written by me and my co-EP, Dominic. So again, that was part of the reason why we were in the writer's room, so that we could, when we were writing demos and we were doing it really, like, it was really rough sometimes where we were just, like we had instruments and MIDI keyboards and stuff in our offices and microphones. So we were just recording the demos wherever we could. And
Yeah,
sometimes we would just pitch them in rough forms to the writer's room. And then that was part of why we had to go back and forth with the writers, because sometimes, like lyrics in the song might make some of the scenes redundant, or you have to trim around them to make sure that they fit in.
yeah,
And also that we were making sure that what we were doing was lining up with the writing. And
yeah,
then we had our composer, Toby, who came on board much earlier than most composers do onto shows. So he was there during our pre-production, and we would send him our demos, and then he would, we would meet with him or discuss with him, and then he would, and he's very much story based too. So he would come up with these really wonderful, fully fleshed out pieces just using our vocals. And then that was often what the storyboard artist had to board off of, because having the music as realized as possible was really informative to the storyboard artists and the designers in the process. So yeah, I think it was helpful for us to be able to stay consistent, just having us
yeah.
there writing it and making sure that it was all a part of the story. But
Okay.
Dominic and I both have music backgrounds as well, and we both we've both written music for other shows before, but this was certainly the most involved. And we're both the huge musical theater fans and musical
Yeah,
theater nerds, so it was helpful to have
yeah,
like kind of the same language to speak.
yeah. Definitely, the music of Central World in general. It's like that's a really core part of the storytelling. It is a musical, you know. Um, Definitely. What was your favorite episode to work on the season?
They were all really fun to work on. But I think, honestly, the finale probably was my favorite, just because it was so big and we got to work with like several of our teams. We kind of essentially, it was like 3 episodes combined. So,
Yeah,
and I also have a background in feature. Like I was a storyboard artist at DreamWorks before. So it was nice to kind of figure out how to tell a big story like that again and split it among a team of artists. And also Dominic and I both got we both got to storyboard sequences in it too. So I
yeah,
storyboarded the horse's like eulogy moment, the who was she. I storyboarded that, and then I also storyboarded the last lullaby sequence. So basically, the where the woman is singing to the elk tar at the very end, and then when
yeah.
horse
That
is
was a
singing to
really
riders.
great.
So
That was a really great
I got to
setup for an episode.
thanks.
Yeah.
But yeah, getting to storyboard those key emotional beats was really nice too. Like actually getting to go in there and storyboard them and pitch them, because at the
Yeah.
beginning of the process, I pitched the first episode and sang, and it was nice to get back in there and do some storyboarding again, and to really feel like it was at the on the ground with everybody, and being able to pitch the finale to the room was with everybody else, like with a bigger team, was really fun to work on, and it was really emotional. So yeah.
Yeah, it was it was pretty nice, and it was Centaurworld has been a gift. I must tell you that, of storytelling and mind-blowing music, and the team behind it has been absolutely phenomenal, bringing all that color, you know, to the fans, and it was definitely it definitely made Christmas come a lot sooner. I tell you that, man.
Thank
So
you.
thank you. Thank you for creating. Thank you for creating such honesty and purity. Um, and thanks for making all the time to actually share with the fans. There's so many questions still coming in, but I know if we dive into all of them, we'll probably not leave here in an hour.
Right.
So um, definitely there will be hopefully another time to dive into these. The fan base is definitely global. You guys have created a story that everyone is connected with, and I'm excited for season three because they better be a season three. um,
Yeah, we have not we don't currently have plans for a season three, but that's something I would love to do.
yeah,
Yeah, like I am
it'll,
certainly open to it. I would love to, but yeah,
yeah. There's so much more stories to be told. There's so much more storytelling
yeah,
um, that can come out of the world. You know, it's such a vast world that you've created, and it's really amazing. So once again, guys, with us here this evening is Megan Nicole Dong, and she's the creator of Centaurworld. And I thank you all. I appreciate you all for joining us this evening on the live. Um, just to close, Megan, do you have any words to the fans of Central World and fans of Megan Dong on what they should be seeing next, or what you're working on personally, if even if it's not involved in network business? Like, yeah,
um I guess what I would say to the fans of the show, thank you for supporting us, and for watching it. It's it was like a really special experience making this. I'm so grateful to the team that helped make it, but also really grateful to everyone who's embraced the show. So yeah, like it was such a unique experience for me as a creator, and as a storyteller. So really grateful to everyone who's watched it and participated in all the discourse around it. But and in terms of what's happening next, yeah, like I'm still kind of trying to figure out what's like the most exciting thing to try next. For me, I
yeah,
always like doing things that are challenging, or things that you know um, kind of push my own limits. So I'm like there's a lot of different things that I would like to explore.
yeah,
But yeah, Center World was certainly like a challenging experience
yeah,
on so many levels, and
yeah.
I'm so proud of what the team, like our cast and crew, did such amazing work, and I'm just really glad that it's out there, and grateful to everyone who's just sort of who got into it and who watched and supported.
Yeah. Um, uh, Ladies and gentlemen, Megan Dong, thank you so much, Megan. Appreciate you. See you again soon.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah. Have a great evening.
You too. Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. It's been a great evening. Thanks for rolling with us through the network cuts and through the slight interruptions. We're very excited to bring you more conversations with industry directors and creators across the world, talking and sharing about their stories and the process to their stories. This video would be available on our IGTV, so please just check it out. If you ever want to, just get another feel of the interview. For now, we're saying good night and have a splendid holiday season. Bye, guys.